People say betrayal is the worst kind of pain, especially when it comes from someone you would have given the world to. I didn't know heartbreak could be so blinding, so humiliating, until Marembi left me. And she didn't just leave me, she traded me for wealth, status, and glittering lies. But life, in its strange way, has a funny sense of justice. Because sometimes, when you think you've reached rock bottom, that's when the tide turns and washes ashore a truth so powerful, it can crumble everything built on pride. This is the story of how my ex-fiancé abandoned me for a rich girl, only to realize, too late, that the man she thought was small owned the very ground beneath her privileged feet. My name is Jabari. I'm a 29-year-old marine biologist from Kenya. I grew up in a fishing village near Kilifi, where I was raised by my grandmother after my parents died in a ferry accident. My life was humble, simple, but it was mine. I met Marembi during a local environmental conference in Mombasa. She was intelligent, stunning, and spoke with the kind of certainty that made rooms go silent. She was in law school, interning at a big firm, and she loved to talk about justice, equality, and empowerment. We fell for each other, fast. It wasn't perfect, but it was passionate. She said she didn't care that I lived modestly or that I spent most of my time on the ocean tagging sea turtles or monitoring coral reefs. But love, I've learned, is often tested in silence, not storms. Things changed after I got a fellowship to study coral restoration in Seychelles for a year. I wanted her to come with me, or at least visit. But Marembi wanted more. I can't keep pretending this is enough, she said over the phone one humid evening. You love the sea more than you love a future. I want a man who sees beyond fish and sand. That was the last call. Just like that, she disappeared. A month later, photos of her flooded social media, smiling next to the daughter of a real estate magnate. They were attending charity galas, sipping cocktails in Nairobi's most elite rooftop bars, and making headlines as Kenya's power couple. It was humiliating. People whispered that I'd been dumped for someone on her level. Even my grandmother tried to console me, saying, "Sometimes God subtracts to multiply." I buried myself in work. I finished my fellowship and returned to Kenya, determined to let go. But here's where the story shifts. You see, years ago, a wealthy British marine researcher I worked with in Lamu was dying of cancer. I nursed him during his final months when his own family had abandoned him. Before he passed, he deeded me ownership of a small, undeveloped island off Kenya's coast, a wild, uninhabited beauty called Nabembe. Back then, it meant little to me. It was remote, full of tangled mangroves and wild goats. But to protect its fragile marine life, I kept it untouched. No one really knew I owned it. Until 4 years later. That's when it happened. I was consulting with a coastal protection NGO when I got a call from a resort company requesting marine permits for Nabembe. Curious, I went through the documents and saw the client's name. Marembi's partner. They had leased Nabembe from a third-party agent and planned to spend a lavish escape week there. I smiled. The agent didn't know the island was under a conservation restriction, and more importantly, that I was its legal owner. I had two choices. Block the vacation quietly. Or, let it unfold and be there to greet them. 3 weeks later, I boarded a small eco-boat and made my way to Nabembe Island. I had arranged for 2 caretakers to clear a small section for their glamping experience. The rest of the island remained wild, raw, and mysterious. On the 3rd day of their arrival, I walked onto the beach just before sunset. I wore a simple linen shirt, sandals, and sunglasses. They were sipping wine under a palm canopy. Marembi froze when she saw me. Her partner, a woman with perfectly curled hair and diamonds in her ears, gave me a polite smile. "Are you the tour guide?" she asked. Marembi's face paled. "Jabari." I smiled. "Welcome to Nabembe Island." I extended my hand. "I'm the owner." Her wineglass shook. This is your island?" I nodded slowly. "Yes." I've owned it for nearly 5 years. Her partner laughed. Wait. You mean you? A marine guy owns this? Marembi said nothing. Her eyes were flicking around, searching for a lie, a trap, a hole in reality. I gave them a tour of the island, explaining its history, the conservation laws, and how their so-called agent illegally leased it. They had no choice but to leave in 2 days. At dinner, while her partner was on the phone, furious at her assistant, Marembi approached me. Why didn't you ever tell me you owned this place? She asked, eyes glassy. I laughed gently. Would it have mattered? She hesitated. I thought, you had no ambition. No vision. I had vision, I said. Just not the kind measured in handbags or champagne bars. She looked away. I didn't know what I was leaving behind. I nodded. Sometimes we only see the value of things after we've traded them for glitter. As I sailed away from the island 2 days later, watching the same woman who once left me for riches now looking lost and small on my shore, I didn't feel triumph. I felt peace. Because real wealth isn't loud. It's silent, deep, and often hidden beneath rough waves. And the people who once discarded you for being too little often come back when they realize you were never small, just silent about your greatness. The night after I left Nabembe Island, I stayed in a small eco-lodge on the mainland, just across the channel. I sat by the fire pit, sipping ginger tea, replaying the day's events like waves in my head. I should have felt satisfied, vindicated even. But I didn't. There was no pleasure in seeing Marembi broken, no delight in the collapse of her illusions. Because once upon a time, I truly loved her. What I saw on that island wasn't just a woman who made a mistake. I saw someone lost in a world of pretenses, swimming in wealth but gasping for something real. The next morning, I received an unexpected message from my caretaker on Nabembe. It was brief. She stayed behind. Alone. Confused, I took the boat back. As I stepped onto the island, I found Marembi sitting under a baobab tree near the shore, barefoot, staring at the ocean. Her partner had left, furious about the embarrassment and media leak. She looked up slowly, eyes red. I needed to feel grounded, she said. This island, it's the first place I've felt anything in years. I sat beside her in silence. I chased a life that looked good on paper, she continued. Wealth, fame, influence. But behind every party, I was drowning. The girl I left you for? She loved owning people. I was just another feather in her crown. I remained quiet. Do you hate me? She asked, finally turning to face me. I sighed. I don't. I mourned what we had, but I moved on. Not out of bitterness, but growth. You chose your path, and I chose mine. But now, we're no longer the people we used to be. She closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. I thought I was trading up. But I only traded truth for glitter. I hurt you, and now I've lost everything. I stood, brushing the sand off my palms. Maybe this island has one last gift for you, stillness. Stay. Breathe. Feel the silence you've been running from. And I left her there. Not as revenge, but as a final act of mercy. Back on the mainland, days passed. I never heard from her again. Word spread in whispers through social circles, but no one dared confront me. The island remained mine, and peace reclaimed its throne. But one afternoon, I found a handwritten note at my lodge. Thank you for letting me sit with my shame. Thank you for not humiliating me publicly. I will never forget what you gave me, dignity in the face of my betrayal. I'm starting over, far away. Maybe one day, I'll be worth the forgiveness I can't ask for. Marembi. The island taught me something, just as it taught her. Wealth is not gold, but grace. Power is not noise, but peace. And the richest people often walk barefoot, unseen, until life forces others to open their eyes. It's been 2 years since that chapter of my life closed, since Marumbi left Nabembe Island and disappeared into her own silence. Sometimes, when the ocean is calm and the sun falls gently on the waves, I walk the shores of the island alone. I don't walk to remember her, I walk to remember the man I became because of her betrayal. After that encounter, my life didn't suddenly bloom with fairy tale success. No camera crews followed me. No one wrote articles about the man who owned the island. And I preferred it that way. I continued my marine conservation work. I turned Nabembe into an officially protected marine sanctuary, partnering with the local government and international NGOs. We brought in students from nearby coastal towns to learn about biodiversity and ocean preservation. Young people, children of fishermen, now speak of coral reefs like they speak of heroes. But every once in a while, I get asked by volunteers or curious travelers, "Is it true that someone once tried to turn this place into a luxury resort?" I smile. "Yes," I say. "But they didn't understand its value. And they never do. Because people chase noise, glitter, fame, excess, without realizing that true richness lies in the quiet things: loyalty, peace, purpose." One morning, as I sat on a bamboo bench near the shoreline, I received an email from a name I hadn't seen in years. Marumbi. It was short. She didn't ask for reconciliation. She didn't mention the past in detail. She only wrote, "I opened a legal aid clinic in Kisumu, helping rural women with property rights and domestic violence cases. You once told me real justice begins in quiet places. I'm finally listening. Thank you for letting me find my silence." I stared at the screen for a while, the waves crashing softly behind me. I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because I knew words weren't necessary anymore. We had both moved on, changed, matured in different ways. Her message was not a plea for a second chance, it was a quiet thank you, an acknowledgement of a wound that had finally healed on both sides. When people hear the title of my story, "My ex left me for a rich girl," until she found out I owned the island they vacationed on, they expect revenge, humiliation, triumph. But life isn't always that theatrical. Sometimes the best revenge is not proving someone wrong. Sometimes the best revenge is building a life so whole, so peaceful, that the people who left you behind can only stand at a distance and marvel at what they lost. I never got the girl back. But I found something better, myself. And in doing so, I built a kingdom no one can take from me. A kingdom rooted not in money, but in meaning. Ask yourself, if someone took everything from you today, would you still be rich with what matters most? Because sometimes, when people walk away thinking they upgraded, they eventually realize, too late, that they left behind something priceless. Let them go. And when they land on your island, let them see who you've become. Then sail away in peace.